players like that. So it doesn't feel like the sky is falling when you watch them, or I see local media posts about their practices and things like that. But from the perspective of what the season is going to be at this point, the sky is kind of falling. You know, it just every single time you hope that the Kings can prove you wrong, they don't. They prove you right. And if you are a caller or texter who said, Alan, I don't want to be hurt by this team anymore, I hear you. Because even without Ja Morant playing, who we will talk about the Ja Morant situation. If it wasn't for Zion Williamson, there would be a lot more heat on Ja Morant. And I get it. You can't do anything about injuries. It's the worst part of sports. But if it wasn't for Zion Williamson, a lot of people would be paying more attention to the fact that Ja Morant just kind of never plays. So we'll talk about that. And he's out again tonight. But the Kings have lost to the Grizzlies when Ja Morant was out in the fourth quarter, right? When he was ejected. So the Kings have bigger fish to fry. And regardless of whether Ja Morant plays or not, they need to figure out who exactly they want to be, who exactly they could be. And when you look at this season, I am curious now because I felt the same way. This isn't really a Doug Christie thing, but do you look at the Mike Brown firing any differently now? Because you made a decision to change up the feeling in the locker room, whatever it is. And, oh, by the way, I think we can all confirm that they're basically where they would be if the biggest Mike Brown hater out there can't tell me the Kings have actively tried to fall out of the play-in and they're unable to do it. They lose the battle of the trick off against the Suns, and they're still in the 9 seed. Thanks to the Suns being incapable of playing professional basketball unless they're playing the Kings, of course, and the Mavericks fielding a team that could possibly lose in March Madness. Fielding a roster that if you get them up against a random team and they play 10 times, that college team might get them. That's the lineup that the Mavericks are putting out. So the Kings, as much as they try to fall out of the play-in, are unable to fall out of the play-in. So now, even to the biggest Mike Brown hater, I think we can all confirm that Mike Brown could have done this. I don't think there's anyone out there, if it was, it's a good thing they moved on for Mike Brown or they'd be the 12th seed. No, they've literally tried, and they are unable to fall out of the play-in. So do you look at some of the decisions that were made any differently? If you were a move off of De'Aaron Fox guy, I was kind of that person, right? Do you look at that any differently now? A lot of times people will say, Alan, I don't want to talk about the past. Let's move on. Let's move forward. I don't want to talk about Mike Brown. I don't want to talk about De'Aaron Fox. Move on. Move on to what? Right? Move on to what? That'd be my question. I'd rather revisit how we got here to make it known, because I know people listen. I'll tell you that right now. I got checked, okay, a couple of weeks ago. So I know people listen. So if you think your voice doesn't matter, it does. So as we revisit how in the world we got here, the question is, where are we headed next? Because, okay, fine. Let's not talk about Mike Brown. Let's not talk about De'Aaron Fox. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the game tonight as the Kings have given us really no hope, right? Could they figure it out and get off of the losing side of things? They've lost 4 straight. Maybe they could. But Carmichael Dave, Jason Ross, we all keep talking about this purgatory. That's where they are. Do you now look at how the Kings got here any differently? If you are the biggest Mike Brown hater in the world, and 916-339-1140, it's a Monday. Phone lines open all day. 916-339-1140. the biggest Mike Brown hater in the world, do you feel any differently? Because there's no way that when they fired Mike Brown, they expected to be in the same spot. Because we now know also that it's all connected. Hey, we're going to move on from Mike Brown. That means we're probably going to lose De'Aaron Fox. So they made this decision. It's okay to make decisions if you have a plan, even if those plans don't necessarily work. The issue is, I don't think they had a plan. It was, well, we're losing. I don't like it. Fans are booing. Let's move on and fire a guy who we haven't even started to pay the new contract, by the way. And because we're going to fire this guy, we're probably going to lose De'Aaron Fox, but we're okay with that too. Because, hey, we'll just figure it out, right? Making decisions without plans is my problem. You can make the wrong decision, right? If my daughter, when she gets older, you make the wrong decision, but you feel like you had a plan, then I'm okay with that. But making a decision with no plan is worse. So it's not about whether or not they should have fired Mike Brown or they should have traded De'Aaron Fox. If you have a thought process and the thought process doesn't work out, that's fine. There was just no thought process. It just feels like we always joke about NBA 2K, right? It just feels like the decisions that are being made is just haphazard. No plan. You draft someone and it doesn't work out, you had a plan. The plan didn't work out, but you had a plan. I'm okay with that. It's a gamble. You swing and you miss. But firing a coach in the middle of the season, and Kyle, we were looking up the numbers on this. How many times in the history of the NBA has a team fired a coach in the middle of the season and they've made a playoff run? It just doesn't happen because people don't do that.
Looks like twice.
Please tell me who they were.
Well, okay, so we're talking about just teams who are in the same position as the Kings. Because like Ty Lue taking over for David Blatt, that doesn't count.
I mean, we can count it if we want.
Okay, fine, we can count that one. It's the Hawks a couple years ago when they fired Lloyd Pierce and Nate McMillan took over.
That's right, with Jeff Teague.
No, it wasn't Jeff Teague. This was when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals with Trae Young. And this was when Ben Simmons passed up the wide open dunk, and that's why they got to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Got it.
This was with Kevin Huerter was still on the team at that point.
Okay, well, that tells you.
Kevin Huerter.
Mm-hmm.
He had 29 points in the closeout game.
And who's the other one?
2018 Milwaukee Bucks, where they fired Jason Kidd. They were 500. They made the playoffs as a 7 seed. And then the next year they hired Budenholzer and Giannis won MVP. And that was the beginning of their air quote dynasty.
So twice.
I mean, there are other examples, but those are the two, like, in the year that you're talking about.
And not to mention both in the Eastern Conference, by the way. So that's part of it.
There's also a list of interim coaches who got the full-time job, and that's a mixed bag also. We'll get to that later.
Great. So decisions that have been made with no plan. No plan. You know, everybody knows, and by the way, I'll announce my first River Cats game later in the show. Just got the schedule. I'm very excited, so I'll let everyone know when you can catch me out there. But everyone knows I'm big into baseball. And, you know, I was talking to a guy. He got drafted a couple times, actually. Took it, made it to AA, and played professionally for a decade. Japan, all over the place. And he was talking to me about the evolution of hitting and how where they are now, and this is why people obsess over exit velocity, right? Because I'm the type of person, I don't really care about your exit velocity. I'm very old school. Did you get on base or not? But the exit velocity kind of ties into what he's talking about, and it all goes into, did you have a plan at the plate, right? In a game like baseball, where you can fail 7 out of 10 times and make it to the Hall of Fame, you have to look at other things than the result. Did you have a plan? So you go up, you think that they're going to throw you a curveball within the first couple pitches here, so you sit curveball, and you hit it right on the nose, line drive, but it's to the shortstop. So you come back to the dugout, you're 0 for 1 on the night, but at the same time, you had a plan, right? So you weren't quote unquote successful, but you had the right idea. You had a plan. The Kings right now have no plan. And they've shown it over and over again. You could even, to be honest, go back to DeMar DeRozan. We can sit here, oh, DeMar DeRozan's a wing. Okay, that's fine. But there was no fit. It was, we need someone. We need someone right now who's better than Harrison Barnes. And you got that. But there was no plan. We don't really know how it's going to fit, but we'll figure it out later. We don't really know when Devin Carter's going to play, but we'll figure it out later. We don't really know what's going to happen after we fire Mike Brown, but we'll figure it out later. But you don't. You didn't. And you're sitting in the 9-10, which thank the good Lord that you can do that. But you will be here year after year after year after year if you don't make any changes. So as the Sack Chat kicking off, Brett, why are we still talking about Mike Brown and Fox? It's over. Move on. Like I said before, move on to what, Brett? There's nothing to move on to. Okay?
You know what else is over?
Hold on, Kyle. Hold on. This team is literally nothing. You wake up, you get excited to watch a team, and they let you down time and time again. So why are we talking about Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox? Because there's nowhere else to go. So if you continue to just say, we're just going to move on to what, Brett? There's nothing to move on to. They're going to play tonight, win or lose. They're literally stuck in the 9 seed. You can't get your pick, right? They've literally tried. They're trying. It seems like someone on the Sack Chat said, oh, Alan, they're secretly tanking. They might be. But you can't lose enough because the Mavs can't field an actual roster. And the Suns, unless they're playing the Kings, can't win a basketball game. So you can talk about moving on, but there's nothing to move on to. This team, time and time again, has proven to us that it just doesn't make sense. Malik Monk, my favorite player on the team, he cannot score the basketball as a point guard. DeMar DeRozan, based on the minutes that he played, is one of the worst defenders in the NBA. Zach LaVine, still trying to figure out who he is on this team. He doesn't create. He doesn't play make. And when he does, he turns the ball over. Domantas Sabonis, a walking double-double. We know that. But even before the changes, even before the moves, it did not lead to winning basketball. So as we sit here and people ask the question time and time again, hey, why are we looking backwards? Because right now, there's nothing to look forward to. 4 hours with you. We're going to get to some Niners as well. And we got some baseball going. And March Madness. Alan Stiles, Sactown Sports.
On the move,